Welcome back everyone. Today I'm going to be trying out a brand new format on this channel. This video is actually not going to be a top 10 list. I know, right? Shock. Horror. Don't panic though, we've done a couple of videos recently about time capsules and you guys seem to have really enjoyed them so far. One thing I heard back from a lot of you though was that I didn't really go into enough detail on some of them. I hear you. It is difficult to go into a lot of detail when you have 10 items to cover on a list. So we thought, why don't we talk more about time capsules and not limit ourselves by a number and instead just, talk about them. So that's exactly what this is. I'm going to be going into a lot more detail on some of the time capsules that you've loved so far and also ones that I'm sure you've never heard of before. I'm Danny Burke and these are the scary time capsules from the past. Alright, starting off the video now, I'm going to talk about Greg Wilkinson's letter. In July 2017, a strange letter was found in a bathroom wall in a house in Sydney, Australia. It was written by a man called Greg Wilkinson and it contained some disturbing predictions about the year 2060. That wasn't the only thing though. The letter also explained who Greg was and that he wrote the letter on a 15th of April 1995. He enclosed a picture of he and his wife on their wedding day and explained how they met. He listed the cost of everyday items there such as bread and milk. He said that the internet was the hot new thing and that it was currently exploding. Greg even included some information on current technology. He said he was writing the letter on Microsoft Word on a laptop with 8 megabytes of RAM. Greg described that as pretty high end at the time. It does seem quite strange looking back at that because the average smartphone these days is like hundreds of times more powerful than that. The letter begins to take a darker tone though as Greg talks about current generational trends. He said that AIDS is killing thousands of people and that it's decimating poorer countries. Deaths due to AIDS peaked in the mid-90s in the US but have been falling ever since. This morbid tone continues though when Greg moved on to the predictions for the future. Firstly, he states that his wife thinks the letter will be discovered in the year 2020, but Greg thinks it will be closer to 2060. The letter was found in 2017 and so it seems like his wife was almost spot on. Greg went on to say that he believes there will be an ideological problem with Islam that will plunge parts of the world into what he called a global war that could go on forever. Some people said this was a chilling prediction of jihadism in the decades since the letter was written. Others have said that's wrong and that it's an unfair characterization and the prediction has sparked a lot of debate online. Greg also accurately predicted that China will become a world economic superpower. This may seem very obvious to us now, but at the time it was still up for debate as to whether China would be able to handle its own growth. At the end of the letter, Greg apologized to those of us reading in the future if his predictions seemed quite bleak. When the story went viral on Facebook, many users were impressed with his predictions and some even asked for the upcoming lottery numbers. Nice try. Moving on now, we have the Nazi capsule. This is one that I touched on in a previous video, but now I have the chance to go into a lot more detail here, and the details are quite disturbing. In 2016, a time capsule buried by the Nazis in 1934 was found in Poland. Archaeologists had known about the capsule's existence for a number of years, but it was buried under thick concrete. The Nazis had buried it there over 80 years before during the construction of the Ordensburg Crossing C building, which was used to train officers of the Nazi party. It took professional miners to break through the concrete, and even then they had to wade through large amounts of groundwater that had pooled up over the years. Once it was on the surface though, the eager historians opened it up. What they found was both surprising and not really surprising in equal measure. There were a number of photographs, including some images of Adolf Hitler. There were newspapers along with 2 copies of Mein Kampf written by Hitler himself. One of the researchers described the contents of the time capsule as perfectly preserved. The construction of that camp began on April 22nd, 1934. It was made with huge granite foundations and cost 20 million Reichsmarks to construct. It was an important place for the Nazis. They wanted it to be an educational center to train the next generation of Nazi cadets. It had strict requirements on who could be admitted. They had to be at least 5'4", between 23 and 26 years old. They also had to be racially pure. I'm not sure what that means, but it's the Nazis, so we can guess that it would be a pretty horrific thing. They had to be in good health and have no physical limitations. Their classes would include studies of politics, world history and philosophy. They would also be taught battle tactics, military drills and sports. The camp eventually went on to become a base for the Hitler Youth. The more details you learn about the camp, the more creepy this time capsule really becomes. Moving on now, we have Einstein's letter. In 1939, Albert Einstein contributed a letter that he wrote to the World's Fair time capsule capsule. The time capsule is intended to be open in the year 6939, exactly 5,000 years after it was buried. The time capsule was called Time Capsule 1. In 1964, when the World's Fair returned to the same site in New York, a second time capsule called Time Capsule 2 was buried just 10 feet north of the first one. Along with Einstein's letter, Time Capsule 1 contained 35 small everyday items. These included a fountain pen and an alphabet block set. There were also 75 types of fabrics, metals, plastics and seeds. A small microfilm contained literature, art and news events of the early 20th century. These came to over 10 million words and 1,000 pictures. They even included instructions on how to make a large microfilm viewer and a motion picture projector to view the newsreels on there. There were copies of Life magazine, a Kewpie doll, $1 in change and even a pack of Camel cigarettes. The seeds in glass tubes were of wheat, corn, oats, tobacco, cotton, flax, rice, soybeans, alfalfa, sugar beets, carrots and barley. Enough of all that though, let's talk about Einstein's letter. In the years since all this, the world has come to respect Einstein as perhaps one of the most intelligent people to ever walk the earth, and someone who seemed to have a great insight into the unknown. That's why people found his letter that described the brutality of war and its place in human nature as quite disturbing. It read as follows: "Our time is rich in inventive minds, the inventions of which could facilitate our lives considerably. We are crossing the seas by power and utilizing power also in order to relieve humanity from all tiring muscular work. We have learned to fly and we are able to send messages and news without any difficulty over the entire world through electric waves. However, the production and distribution of commodities is entirely unorganized, so that everybody must live in fear of being eliminated from the economic cycle, in this way suffering for the want of everything. Furthermore, people living in different countries kill each other at irregular time intervals, so that also for this reason anyone who thinks about the future must live in fear and terror. This is due to the fact that the intelligence and character of the masses are incomparably lower than the intelligence and character of the few who produce something valuable for the community. I trust that posterity will read these statements with a feeling of proud and justified superiority." Moving on now, we have Dante's time capsule. This story comes from a user on Imgur who said that one day his grandmother invited him over to her house to help her sort through some old stuff. Inside a safe in her ceramics room, he discovered a time capsule that even she didn't know was there. He found the safe while clearing out a cupboard and noticed that it had a false bottom to it. The fact that his grandma had no clue what was in there was exciting. It meant that its contents had been lost in time. They were about to discover something really big. Unfortunately though, his grandmother didn't know the combination to open the safe. After some deliberation, she gave him permission to open it by any means necessary. So they took it outside and they pried it open with a chisel. Inside the box, they quickly realized that the capsule had been put together by one of their own family members. It wasn't the grandmother's parents, but the grandmother's grandmother who had made the time capsule. That meant it was at least 4 generations old. Inside they found a message that read, "Abandon all regret, ye who enter here." Now this is a slight change from the famous line in Dante's The Divine Comedy, which reads, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." They weren't sure why their relative had swapped the words regret and hope. The poem that it's quoting describes a journey through hell, purgatory and heaven. They weren't put off by this slightly dark overtone though, and continued to search through the time capsule. They found a black silk bag with Chinese calligraphy on the outside. They translated it to find that it meant double happiness. They opened the bag, which contained an assortment of items including a pen, a plastic box, a suede pouch and even an oil lamp. Then they found pictures of his great-grandfather and his great-great-grandmother. Inside the suede pouch was a nice old pocket watch and a bunch of stamps from every corner of the world. The plastic box contained coins that were also from pretty much anywhere you can think of. Some of the countries don't even exist anymore. The final item that they discovered was a single solitary key. There was no note or clue as to what this key was for. It was a total mystery, but mystery was what this time capsule was all about. Perhaps one day someone will figure out what the strange warning on the paper meant and what exactly this key can unlock, but for now the answers are lost in time. So there we go guys, those were some scary time capsules for you in a little bit more detail than you're used to us doing on this channel. What did you think of that? Did you like there being less stories but more detail? Do you just miss the top 10 format? Hey, it's a new year, we're just trying out some new things, so let us know your opinion of course. I'm going to quickly jump over and read a comment out from our first time capsule video. Joe Schmo said, "The note wasn't a creepy warning, the Dante line is abandon all hope, while the note said abandon all regret. The note was saying the opener would not regret it." I think this is a great comment for the end of the video because, as I'm sure you all know, I just talked about the Dante story in this video in a bit more detail. I think Joe might be onto something here. Maybe it's just a joke. Maybe they put that intense line in and swapped a word out just to make it seem a little bit more lighthearted. Perhaps they knew how creepy a time capsule can look after a few decades and they wanted whoever found it to not be alarmed. I hope it's that. That sounds like a much nicer theory. I'd love to hear your theories on everything else we've talked about here today. It seems like that whenever I share one of these stories, you guys just figure something out way before I do. Honestly, I do love it. Thanks for watching. As always guys, my name is Danny Burke and I will see you all in the next video.